In the bustling city of Seattle, where the rain-slicked streets reflected the neon glow of downtown lights and the air carried the faint scent of pine from the nearby forests, lived a young girl named Amelia Hartley. At just 14 years old, Amelia was a prodigy in the world of ballet, her slender frame gliding across stages with the grace of a swan on a tranquil lake. Her life revolved around the rhythm of pointe shoes tapping against wooden floors, the strains of Tchaikovsky filling the air during endless rehearsals, and the dream of one day performing on the grandest stages of the world. Amelia's parents, Jonathan and Eliza Hartley, were her biggest supporters. Jonathan, a software engineer who often worked late into the night coding algorithms for a tech giant, and Eliza, a former dancer herself who had traded her tutu for a career in teaching at a local studio. They had sacrificed much for Amelia's passion: weekend trips to competitions, expensive lessons with renowned instructors, and the emotional toll of watching their daughter push her body to its limits. The family lived in a modest two-story home in the suburbs, where Amelia's room was adorned with ribbons from past victories, posters of famous ballerinas like Anna Pavlova, and a worn-out music box that played Swan Lake when wound up. It was a life of discipline and beauty, but beneath the surface, there were subtle cracks. Amelia's occasional complaints about the pressure, her father's growing distance due to work stress, and her mother's unspoken regrets about her own unfulfilled dreams. Yet, nothing could prepare them for the fateful day of the Northwest Ballet Invitational, a prestigious competition held annually at the opulent McCaw Hall in the heart of the city. The competition was a spectacle of talent, drawing young dancers from across the Pacific Northwest and beyond. On that crisp autumn morning in October, the hall buzzed with excitement, parents adjusting costumes, coaches giving last-minute pep talks, and the scent of hairspray mingling with the polished wood of the stage. Amelia arrived early, her pink duffel bag slung over her shoulder, containing her custom-fitted tutu, a pair of broken-in pointe shoes, and a small locket necklace that had belonged to her grandmother, a token for good luck. She was scheduled to perform in the afternoon session, her routine a mesmerizing interpretation of The Dying Swan, a piece that demanded not just technical precision but emotional depth. As she warmed up in a side room, stretching her limbs and practicing pirouettes, she chatted with fellow competitors. There was Sophie from Portland, a fiery redhead known for her powerful leaps, Mia from Vancouver, whose flexibility was the envy of all, and a quiet newcomer named Lila, who kept to herself but watched everyone with intense eyes. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of camaraderie and rivalry, whispers of who might take home the grand prize, a scholarship to a top ballet academy in New York. Amelia felt a flutter of nerves but pushed them aside, focusing on the music in her head. Her parents sat in the audience, Jonathan checking his phone intermittently for work emails, Eliza clutching a program with white-knuckled fingers. The morning performances flew by in a blur of applause and critiques from the judges, a panel of retired prima ballerinas and choreographers whose sharp eyes missed nothing. As Amelia's turn approached, she slipped into the wings, her heart pounding like the drumbeat in a symphony. The stage lights cast long shadows, and the audience hushed as the announcer called her name. She stepped out, the spotlight enveloping her like a warm embrace, and began her dance. Her movements were flawless, arabesques that seemed to defy gravity, fouettes spun with dizzying speed, and an emotive portrayal of the swan's final moments that brought tears to several spectators' eyes. The applause was thunderous when she finished, curtsying deeply before exiting stage left. Backstage, she was elated, hugging her coach and sipping water from a bottle, her cheeks flushed with triumph. "You are incredible," Sophie said, clapping her on the back. But as the day wore on, with more performances and a break for lunch, something shifted. Amelia mentioned feeling a bit lightheaded, perhaps from the adrenaline crash, and decided to step outside for fresh air. The hall had a side exit leading to an alley, away from the main crowds, where delivery trucks occasionally parked. She told Mia she'd be right back, slipping out with her phone in hand to text her parents a quick update. That was the last anyone saw of her. Minutes turned into an hour, and when her name was called for the awards ceremony, she was nowhere to be found. Panic set in. Her coach searched the dressing rooms. Her parents combed the halls, calling her name with growing desperation. Security reviewed footage, but the alley camera was glitchy, showing only a shadowy figure approaching before cutting out. The police were called, statements taken, and the competition ground to a halt as whispers of foul play spread like wildfire. The disappearance of Amelia Hartley became an overnight sensation, plastered across local news channels and social media feeds. "Promising ballerina vanishes mid-competition," screamed the headlines, accompanied by photos of her mid-pirouette, her smile radiant and innocent. The Hartleys were thrust into a nightmare, their home besieged by reporters camping on the lawn, microphones thrust in their faces as they pleaded for information. Jonathan, usually stoic, broke down in interviews, his voice cracking as he described Amelia's love for dance and her kind heart. Eliza, drawing on her inner strength, organized search parties, volunteers combing parks and neighborhoods with flyers bearing Amelia's face. The police, led by Detective Maria Ruiz, a seasoned investigator with a no-nonsense demeanor and a track record of solving missing persons cases, dove into the investigation. They interviewed everyone at the competition, competitors who recalled Amelia's brief exit, staff who noted nothing unusual, and even vendors outside the hall. Suspicions arose. Could it be a rival dancer jealous of her talent? Sophie had a heated argument with Amelia weeks prior over a shared instructor, but her alibi checked out. Or perhaps a stalker. Amelia had mentioned creepy messages on her Instagram from anonymous accounts praising her beauty a bit too fervently. Detectives traced IP addresses, but they led to dead ends, public Wi-Fi spots. The alley yielded few clues: a dropped hair ribbon matching Amelia's costume, and faint tire tracks that could belong to any vehicle. As days turned to weeks, the case grew cold, tips flooding in but none panning out. A sighting at a bus station that was a lookalike, a psychic claiming visions of water that led to fruitless lake searches. The community rallied around the Hartleys, candlelight vigils held at the Ballet Hall, pink ribbons tied to trees in solidarity. But privately, the family fractured. Jonathan buried himself in work, his code becoming an escape from the endless what-ifs, while Eliza quit teaching, spending hours poring over maps and online forums for similar cases. They argued late into the night, Jonathan accusing Eliza of pushing Amelia too hard, Eliza retorting that he was never present. Amelia's room remained untouched, her music box silent, gathering dust. Friends from school sent cards, but the void was immense. Meanwhile, Detective Ruiz pursued leads relentlessly, a suspicious van seen near the hall, owned by a local maintenance worker with a minor criminal record, but he had an ironclad alibi. Then there was Lila, the quiet competitor, whose background check revealed a troubled past, foster homes, a history of petty theft, but no concrete link. Months dragged on, the holidays a blur of forced cheer, New Year's resolutions centered on hope. Spring brought renewed searches, divers in the Puget Sound, but nothing. The media moved on to newer stories, the public's attention waning, leaving the Hartleys in a limbo of grief and uncertainty. Amelia's 15th birthday passed unmarked, a cake uneaten, candles unlit. It was as if she had pirouetted into thin air, leaving only echoes of her laughter and the faint scent of her favorite lavender perfume. Deep in the investigation files, Ruiz uncovered a thread. Amelia's phone record showed a text from an unknown number just before she vanished, reading, "Meet me outside, important." The number traced to a burner phone purchased at a convenience store, no CCTV footage available. This suggested premeditation, not a random act. Suspects multiplied. A disgruntled former coach fired for misconduct, a fan from online who attended the event. The FBI got involved briefly, profiling a possible abductor, male, 30 to 50, with a connection to the arts. But leads evaporated like morning mist. The Hartleys sought therapy, Jonathan admitting his neglect, Eliza confronting her vicarious ambitions. Support groups for missing children's families became their lifeline, stories shared of endless waiting. Summer arrived, 8 months since that fateful day, the city alive with festivals, but for the Hartleys, time stood still. Then, a break, not from police work, but from an unlikely source. At a landfill on the outskirts of town, where seagulls circled heaps of refuse and the air reeked of decay, a worker sorting recyclables stumbled upon something chilling. Buried amid trash bags and discarded appliances was a pink duffel bag, stained and torn, containing a tutu, point shoes, and a locket necklace. But more horrifying, wrapped in plastic, was a small, decomposed hand clutching a ballet ribbon. DNA tests confirmed it was Amelia's. The discovery reignited the case, but the paragraph ends here, the full horror unfolding in the next. The discovery at the landfill sent shockwaves through Seattle, ripping open the wounds of a case that had begun to fade from public consciousness. The pink duffel bag, once a symbol of Amelia Hartley's dreams, now lay in a sterile evidence room, its contents catalogued with clinical precision. The tattered tutu, the worn point shoes, the locket with its tiny engraved rose, and, most gut-wrenching, the severed hand still gripping the ballet ribbon. The landfill, a sprawling wasteland on the edge of the city where the stench of rot mingled with the salty breeze from the Puget Sound, became a hive of activity. Forensic teams combed through heaps of garbage, their hazmat suits stark against the gray mounds, searching for more remains or clues to how Amelia's belongings ended up there. Detective Maria Ruiz, her jaw set with renewed determination, stood at the site, her boots sinking into the muddy ground as she coordinated with the crime scene unit. The media descended like vultures, headlines screaming, "Gruesome find in ballerina case," while news vans lined the access road, their satellite dishes piercing the overcast sky. For the Hartleys, the news was a cruel twist of hope and horror. Confirmation that Amelia was likely gone, yet no full body to bury, no closure to grasp. Jonathan collapsed in their living room, the weight of grief crushing his usual stoicism, while Eliza sat frozen, staring at a photo of Amelia mid-leap, her mind replaying that October day like a broken record. The community, once rallied by vigils, now whispered in coffee shops and grocery stores. How did this happen? Who could do this to a girl so full of light? The investigation roared back to life with a ferocity that matched the public's outrage. Ruiz and her team traced the landfill's intake records, a logistical nightmare of delivery schedules and waste routes. The bag was found in a section designated for commercial waste, suggesting it came from a business or institution rather than a residential bin. This narrowed the focus to Seattle's downtown and industrial areas, including the vicinity of McCaw Hall. Detectives re-interviewed everyone connected to the competition, digging deeper into alibis and motives. The maintenance worker with the van, Carl Thompson, was hauled in again. His record included a dismissed assault charge from years ago, and his job at the hall gave him access to the alley. But his time card showed him clocked out before Amelia's disappearance, and coworkers vouched for his presence at a bar that evening. Then there was Lila, the enigmatic dancer, now 16, who had moved to a new foster home in Tacoma. Her reticence during initial interviews raised flags, and Ruiz learned she'd been expelled from a previous dance school for threatening a peer. A search of her current residence turned up nothing. No pink ribbons, no connection to Amelia beyond shared stage time. Yet, Ruiz's gut nagged her. Lila's eyes, always watching, held something unspoken. The burner phone lead, meanwhile, hit another dead end. The convenience store's cash-only sale left no paper trail, and the clerk barely recalled the transaction. Forensic analysis of the hand revealed little. No fingerprints, no foreign DNA, only traces of soil and industrial grease, suggesting it had been moved multiple times before landing in the trash. Public pressure mounted, with online sleuths flooding X with theories, some outlandish, a cult operating in the city's underbelly, a serial killer targeting dancers, others more grounded, pointing to someone close to the competition. A hashtag Justice for Amelia, trended, alongside blurry photos from the event, users zooming in on faces in the crowd. One post caught Ruiz's eye, a grainy image of a man in a dark jacket near the alley, time-stamped minutes after Amelia's exit. The poster, an amateur photographer at the event, claimed he didn't notice the figure until reviewing his shots later. Facial recognition software failed to identify him, the image too pixelated, but it fueled speculation. Was he a stagehand? A parent? A predator who'd blended into the chaos? Ruiz cross-referenced the photo with security footage from nearby businesses, but the alley's blind spot remained a curse. Meanwhile, the Hartleys faced their own torment. Eliza, unable to sleep, began visiting the landfill daily, standing at the fence line, staring at the endless piles as if they held answers. Jonathan, guilt gnawing at him for every missed recital, joined a support group for grieving parents, his voice trembling as he shared memories of Amelia's laughter over Sunday pancakes. Their marriage teetered, love strained by blame and silence, yet they clung to a shared mission: finding the truth. Community support waned as fear crept in. Parents pulled their kids from dance classes, wary of unseen dangers. The forensic team's work at the landfill yielded a breakthrough, albeit a grim one. Amid the debris, they found a second item linked to Amelia, a single ballet slipper, its satin-stained but unmistakable, buried deeper in the same sector. Soil samples on the slipper matched those on the hand, hinting they were dumped together, possibly months apart from the initial disappearance. This suggested a calculated effort to dispose of evidence over time, pointing to someone with patience and access. Ruiz shifted focus to the Hall's waste management system. McCaw Hall contracted a private company, Puget Waste Solutions, whose trucks serviced multiple downtown venues. A driver, Eddie Vance, emerged as a person of interest. In his late 40s, with a history of loitering complaints near arts venues, Eddie had a route that included the hall the day after the competition. His personnel file noted a warning for tardiness, and coworkers described him as a loner who often lingered after shifts. When questioned, Eddie was evasive, claiming he just drove the truck and saw nothing unusual. A search of his apartment found no direct evidence, but a notebook with sketches of ballerinas, some resembling Amelia, sent chills down Ruiz's spine. His alibi, home alone watching TV, was unverifiable. Still, without concrete proof, he was released, though Ruiz ordered surveillance, convinced he was hiding something. The Hartleys, meanwhile, grappled with the landfill's revelations. Eliza, driven by a mother's instinct, began researching waste routes, learning that commercial bins were often unsecured, accessible to anyone with nerve. She wondered if someone had used the hall's dumpster to hide Amelia's belongings, a thought that kept her awake, imagining her daughter's final moments. Jonathan, seeking action, hired a private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop named Ray Callahan, who dug into the competition's underbelly, rivalries, jealousies, even whispers of coaches exploiting young dancers. Callahan's interviews uncovered a rumor: a choreographer, Victor Klein, had been overly attentive to Amelia, offering private lessons that Eliza had declined. Klein, now teaching in California, denied involvement, his schedule placing him out of state during the key time frame. Yet, his name lingered in Ruiz's notes, another thread in a tangled web. As summer faded into fall, the case hovered on the brink of another stall, the landfill's secrets yielding no more body parts, only questions. Amelia's story, once a beacon of hope, now haunted Seattle, a reminder of how beauty could vanish in an instant, leaving only fragments in the trash. The investigation pressed on, Ruiz vowing to follow every lead, while the Hartleys braced for what the next discovery might reveal. As autumn leaves blanketed Seattle in shades of crimson and gold, the Amelia Hartley case took a darker turn, the landfill discovery serving as a grim catalyst that propelled the investigation into uncharted territories of human depravity. Detective Maria Ruiz, her face etched with lines from sleepless nights poring over case files in her cluttered office overlooking the bustling precinct, felt the weight of the city's expectations pressing down. The severed hand and ballet slipper had been analyzed exhaustively. The hand showed signs of post-mortem dismemberment with a sharp blade, possibly a surgical tool or hunting knife, and the slipper bore faint traces of chloroform residue, hinting at abduction rather than a voluntary departure. This elevated the case from missing person to homicide, drawing in the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, whose profilers painted a portrait of the perpetrator. intelligent, organized, with a fixation on youth and beauty, perhaps a collector of mementos from his victims. Ruiz coordinated with Agent Harlan Crow, a tall, bespectacled man with a southern drawl and a knack for reading crime scenes like open books. Together, they revisited the landfill, now cordoned off with yellow tape fluttering in the wind, excavators carefully sifting through layers of refuse under floodlights that turn night into day. Workers grumbled about overtime, but the air was thick with tension. Everyone knew another find could crack the case wide open. Media helicopters hovered overhead, their rotors chopping the air, while reporters shouted questions from behind barriers. Any more body parts? Is there a serial killer on the loose? The Hartleys, informed via a somber phone call, arrived at the precinct, their eyes hollow from grief. Eliza clutched Jonathan's arm, whispering, "What if there's more? What if we find her? All of her?" The couple met with Ruiz, who laid out the new evidence gently, but the images, sterile photos of a hand on a lab table, elicited sobs that echoed through the sterile halls. The surveillance on Eddie Vance, the waste truck driver, intensified. Undercover officers tailed him through his mundane routine, early mornings at the depot, where he loaded bins with mechanical precision, afternoons driving routes that snaked through the city's underbelly, evenings alone in his dingy apartment above a laundromat in a rundown neighborhood. His sketches of ballerinas, confiscated during the search, were scrutinized by a forensic psychologist who noted obsessive details, the curve of a neck, the arch of a foot, that mirrored Amelia's physique from competition photos. Eddie became the prime suspect in the public's eye, fueled by leaked details to the press, but Ruiz cautioned against jumping to conclusions. "We need hard evidence," she told her team during a briefing, the whiteboard behind her scrawled with timelines and suspect names. A wiretap on Eddie's phone revealed cryptic calls to an unregistered number, discussions about cleaning up messes that could be innocuous waste jargon or something sinister. Agents posed as maintenance workers to bug his truck, discovering a hidden compartment under the seat containing gloves stained with what lab tests confirmed as human blood traces, though degraded and not yet matched to Amelia. Eddie's interrogation was a marathon, hours under harsh lights, Ruiz pressing him on his whereabouts, his interest in dance. He cracked slightly, admitting to watching performances from afar, admiring the art, but denied any involvement. "I pick up trash, not kids," he snarled, his hands trembling as he signed a statement. Released on bail, he vanished 2 days later, his apartment emptied, triggering a manhunt that spanned the state. Billboards with his face dotted highways, tips pouring in from as far as Portland, sightings at motels, a man matching his description buying bleach at a hardware store. Meanwhile, the online frenzy escalated, #JusticeForAmelia evolving into a digital witch hunt. Armchair detectives on forums like Reddit's r/unsolved mysteries dissected every detail, some doxing innocent bystanders, others crowdsourcing funds for the Hartley's private investigator, Ray Callahan. Callahan, with his trench coat and perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, delved into the ballet world's shadows. He interviewed former competitors, uncovering a web of envy and exploitation, coaches demanding favors for spots, parents bribing judges, dancers using performance enhancers. One lead pointed to Victor Klein, the choreographer who'd pursued Amelia. Though alibied in California, Callahan flew south, confronting Klein in his sunlit studio amid twirling students. Klein, suave with a manicured beard, admitted admiration but claimed it was professional. "She had potential," he said, eyes darting. A search of his emails revealed messages to Amelia's Instagram, deleted but recovered via subpoena, bordering on inappropriate, compliments on her form, invitations to private sessions. Not enough for arrest, but it painted him as a creep, and Ruiz added him to the watch list. Back in Seattle, Lila, the quiet dancer, resurfaced under scrutiny. Now in therapy for her turbulent past, she confessed to jealousy. Amelia's effortless grace had stung, but provided chat logs showing she was texting friends during the disappearance window. Ruiz, ever thorough, verified them, crossing her off but not without a lingering doubt. The Hartleys' personal hell deepened as they navigated the bureaucracy of death without a body. Insurance claims stalled. Amelia's college fund untouched. Their home a shrine of frozen time. Her dance trophies polished weekly, her bed made as if she'd return. Eliza joined an advocacy group for missing children, speaking at rallies with a voice raw from emotion, her speeches broadcast on local TV. Our daughters are not disposable. Fight for them. Jonathan, seeking solace, volunteered at the ballet studio, teaching basic steps to kids, each twirl a painful echo of Amelia. Their therapist urged communication, sessions filled with tears and revelations. Jonathan's affair years ago, born of loneliness, Eliza's resentment over sacrificed dreams. Yet love persisted, a fragile thread. A tip line breakthrough came mid-November. An anonymous caller claimed to have seen Eddie arguing with a woman near the hall the night after the competition. The voice, distorted, mentioned a pink bag, exchanged. Ruiz traced the call to a payphone in Tacoma, near Lila's foster home, but no prints. This reignited interest in Lila, but she lawyered up, her guardians citing trauma. The FBI's dive into Eddie's background revealed a sealed juvenile record. At 15, he'd been accused of stalking a neighbor girl. Charges dropped for lack of evidence. Patterns emerged, relocations coinciding with unsolved disappearances of young females in Oregon and Washington, all artistic types. A violinist, a painter, now a dancer. Crow theorized a trophy killer, dismembering to prolong the thrill, dumping parts symbolically in waste to discard. Used beauty. As winter's chill set in, snow dusting the landfill like a macabre blanket, excavators unearthed another horror. A human torso, wrapped in industrial plastic, preserved by the cold and anaerobic conditions. DNA rushed through labs confirmed it was Amelia's, marks indicating strangulation and post-mortem mutilation. The news conference was chaos, Ruiz flanked by the mayor announcing, "We believe this is the work of a predator, and we're closing in." The Hartleys, notified privately, shattered anew. Eliza wailing in the precinct bathroom, Jonathan punching a wall, knuckles bloody. Autopsy details leaked. No sexual assault, but organs missing, suggesting surgical precision or black market ties. This pivoted the investigation, searches for medical backgrounds among suspects. Eddie, still at large, fit loosely. His brother was a vet tech. Klein had dance anatomy knowledge. A raid on Eddie's abandoned storage unit yielded jackpot. Photos of Amelia clipped from newspapers, a map with a hall circled, and a journal ranting about fragile swans needing protection. Entries dated post-disappearance alluded to silencing the music, chilling metaphors for murder. Warrants issued, borders alerted. Callahan, tailing leads, spotted Eddie at a seedy motel in Everett, tipping off Ruiz. The SWAT raid was textbook. Doors breached at dawn. Eddie cornered in the bathroom, surrendering with hands up. "It wasn't supposed to end like this," he muttered, cuffed and led away. Interrogation unraveled the truth in fragments. Eddie confessed to lurking at events, fixated on dancers' grace as escape from his drab life. He'd sent the burner text, luring Amelia with a fake judge's note. In the alley, chloroform subdued her. He drove her to a rented warehouse, where obsession turned fatal, a struggle, accidental strangulation. Panicked, he dismembered her, storing parts in freezers, dumping piecemeal via waste routes to evade detection. The hand and slipper first, torso later, duffel as misdirection. Motive? She was too perfect for this world, he claimed, tears streaming. Ruiz, disgusted, charged him with murder, kidnapping, desecration. The Hartleys, witnessing from behind glass, found no solace in justice. Only emptiness. Eliza whispered, "Why her?" as Eddie was arraigned, pleading not guilty despite confession, his lawyer arguing coercion. Trials loomed, but for now, Seattle exhaled, the nightmare's architect caged. Yet questions lingered. Accomplices? Other victims? The case, far from closed, promised more revelations as forensics combed the warehouse, unearthing tools and traces of blood from unidentified sources. Amelia's legacy endured, scholarships in her name, safety reforms at competitions. The Hartleys planned a memorial, pink ribbons fluttering, her music box playing Swan Lake, one last time. With Eddie Vance in custody, the gears of justice ground into motion, transforming the Amelia Hartley case from a haunting mystery into a courtroom spectacle that gripped Seattle and beyond. The precinct buzzed with activity in the days following the arrest, Ruiz's team sifting through the warehouse evidence, blood-stained tarps, a freezer humming ominously in the corner containing more remains, Amelia's legs and arms, preserved like macabre trophies, and a collection of trinkets from other potential victims, including a violin bow and a paintbrush, linking him to cold cases in neighboring states. Eddie, shackled and defiant in his orange jumpsuit, was arraigned in King County Superior Court, the courtroom packed with reporters scribbling furiously, cameras flashing despite the judge's admonitions. His public defender, a harried young attorney named Lena Ortiz, argued for suppression of the confession, claiming sleep deprivation and coercive tactics, but Judge Harlan Graves, a stern veteran with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings, denied the motion after reviewing tapes showing Eddie waiving his rights. Bail was set at an astronomical $5 million, far beyond Eddie's means, ensuring he rotted in remand as the prosecution built their case. District Attorney Carla Benson, a formidable prosecutor with a string of high-profile convictions, took the lead, her opening statements painting Eddie as a shadow predator who preyed on artistic souls to feed his twisted fantasies. The Hartleys attended every hearing, seated in the front row, Eliza's hand clasped in Jonathan's, their faces masks of stoic resolve amid the emotional turmoil. Whispers rippled through the gallery, sympathy for the family, revulsion at the details emerging, how Eddie had stalked Amelia online for months, creating fake profiles to befriend her, culminating in the burner text that sealed her fate. The pretrial phase was a whirlwind of motions and discoveries, Ortiz filing endless paperwork to challenge evidence chains, arguing the warehouse search warrant was overly broad. Ruiz testified early, her voice steady as she detailed the surveillance, the storage unit raid, the journal's damning entries. He wrote about clipping wings to keep beauty eternal, she said, quoting a passage that sent shudders through the courtroom. Forensic experts followed, a parade of white-coated scientists explaining DNA matches, chloroform residues, and the surgical precision of dismemberment. Cuts clean enough to suggest medical training, though Eddie had none, implying self-taught from online tutorials. The defense countered with a psychiatrist diagnosing Eddie with severe obsessive-compulsive disorder exacerbated by childhood abuse, painting him as a victim himself. But Benson dismantled this with cross-examinations highlighting his calculated dumps, the piecemeal disposals designed to taunt authorities. Media coverage exploded, national outlets like CNN and Fox News descending on Seattle, turning the courthouse steps into a circus. Pundits debated on talk shows. Was Eddie a monster or mentally ill? True crime podcasts dissected every angle, some interviewing the Hartleys, who spoke haltingly about Amelia's vibrancy, her love for rainy day reads, her secret talent for baking chocolate chip cookies that melted in your mouth. Eliza's advocacy work intensified. She lobbied for stricter venue security at youth events, her speeches at city council meetings drawing applause and donations. Jonathan, channeling grief into action, started a foundation in Amelia's name, funding art scholarships for underprivileged kids, each recipient a bittersweet reminder of what was lost. As jury selection began in early spring, the city thawed under budding cherry blossoms, but the trial's chill permeated. Potential jurors were grilled on biases. Had they followed the case? Did they believe in rehabilitation? A diverse panel emerged, a retired teacher, a software developer echoing Jonathan's profession, a single mother whose empathy for Eliza was palpable. Opening arguments set the tone. Benson's impassioned narrative of a stolen future, Ortiz's plea for mercy amid madness. Witnesses streamed in, Mia and Sophie from the competition, tearfully recounting Amelia's last words, the landfill worker who found the duffel, his voice quavering as he described the hand's grip on the ribbon, Agent Crow, outlining the serial killer profile that fit Eddie like a glove. The defense poked holes, alibis for other disappearances, character witnesses from Eddie's coworkers calling him harmlessly odd. But the bombshell came mid-trial. A surprise witness, Eddie's estranged sister, Tanya Vance, testifying remotely from Idaho. With trembling hands, she revealed childhood horrors, their father's violence, Eddie's protective role that twisted into control. He collected broken things, she said, alluding to dolls. He'd mutilate and fix. Benson seized on this, arguing it foreshadowed his crimes. The Hartleys endured graphic testimony, Eliza excusing herself during autopsy photos, Jonathan gripping the bench until his knuckles whitened. Outside court, protesters gathered, some demanding death penalty, though Washington had abolished it, others advocating mental health reform. Online, #FreeEddie trended briefly among conspiracy theorists claiming frame-up, countered by #Amelia's voice amplifying survivor stories. Cross-examinations turned brutal, Ortiz grilling Ruiz on surveillance legality, suggesting planted evidence, but Ruiz held firm, her integrity unchallenged. Eddie's turn on the stand was pivotal. He took the oath shakily, his once evasive eyes now hollow. Under Benson's barrage, he reiterated his confession but with twists. It was an accident. She fought back, I panicked. He claimed no intent to kill, just to talk, but journals contradicted, detailing fantasies of possession. Ortiz guided him gently, eliciting tears over his loneliness, but the jury's faces hardened. Closing arguments capped the drama. Benson urging conviction to honor Amelia, Ortiz pleading for second degree over first. Deliberations stretched 3 agonizing days, the Hartleys pacing hotel rooms, media speculating endlessly. The verdict came on a rainy afternoon. Guilty on all counts, first-degree murder, kidnapping, corpse abuse. Sentencing followed swiftly. Life without parole, Judge Graves intoning. Your actions extinguished a light. Society must protect others from your darkness. Eddie slumped, no remorse evident, as bailiffs led him away. The Hartleys embraced outside, tears mingling with rain. A hollow victory. Appeals loomed, but for now, closure beckoned. A funeral planned with recovered remains, pink casket under ballet-themed flowers. Post-trial, Seattle exhaled, but ripples lingered. The Hartleys Foundation flourished, hosting annual galas where young dancers performed, The Dying Swan in tribute. Eliza resumed teaching, her studio a haven emphasizing safety, while Jonathan quit his high-stress job for nonprofit work, their marriage rebuilt through therapy and shared purpose. Ruiz, promoted to captain, mentored young detectives, the case her career pinnacle. Eddie's warehouse yielded more, DNA linking to 2 other victims, closing families' wounds. Yet, doubts nagged, a journal entry mentioning help from shadows, hinting at an accomplice. Investigations continued quietly, Ruiz eyeing Victor Klein anew after anonymous tips surfaced. Lila, cleared but scarred, quit dance for therapy, her foster family supportive. The community evolved, competitions installed better cameras, buddy systems mandated. Amelia's story inspired books, a Lifetime movie, but the Hartleys shunned spotlight, focusing on healing. Summers brought vigils at the hall, pink ribbons eternal. As years passed, the pain dulled, replaced by legacy. Amelia's spirit in every pirouette, a reminder that from tragedy blooms resilience. The trial's echo faded, but for the Hartleys, life stitched together in new patterns. Jonathan and Eliza traveled, scattering Amelia's ashes at favorite spots, the Olympic Peninsula's misty forests, where she'd hiked as a child, New York's Lincoln Center, symbolizing unfulfilled dreams. Back home, they adopted a rescue dog, a bouncy lab named Swan, whose antics brought laughter absent too long. Eliza's classes filled with eager students, one prodigy, young Mia inspired, earning the Amelia Scholarship. Jonathan's foundation expanded nationally, partnering with arts organizations. Ruiz's team cracked the accomplice angle, a former co-worker of Eddie's, arrested for aiding disposals, motivated by debt. His confession sealed loose ends, no more shadows. Seattle's ballet scene thrived safer, Amelia's vanishing a cautionary pivot. The The family found peace in small joys, holiday gatherings, Amelia's music box winding occasionally, its melody a gentle haunt. Grief evolved, not vanished, but woven into life's tapestry, a testament to love's endurance. In the years following Eddie Vance's conviction, the shadow of Amelia Hartley's tragedy lingered over Seattle like a persistent fog rolling in from the Puget Sound, shaping lives, policies, and memories in ways both profound and subtle. The Hartleys, once a family defined by their daughter's radiant presence, navigated a new reality where grief was a constant companion, not a visitor. Eliza, with her dancer's poise now tempered by sorrow, threw herself into advocacy with renewed vigor. She testified before state legislatures, her voice steady as she pushed for Amelia's Law, a bill mandating enhanced security at youth arts events, including mandatory background checks for staff, real-time GPS tracking for participants, and anonymous tip lines integrated with venue apps. The law passed after a grueling session, signed by the governor amid flashing cameras, Eliza standing beside him, a pink ribbon pinned to her lapel. "This is for every child who dreams big," she said in her speech, her eyes glistening but resolute. The foundation Jonathan had started blossomed into a national entity, Amelia Hartley Arts Endowment, funding not just scholarships but safe spaces, community centers with dance studios equipped with panic buttons and counseling services. He traveled the country, speaking at conferences, sharing Amelia's story to crowds of educators and parents, each talk chipping away at his own isolation. Their home, once a mausoleum of untouched mementos, transformed. Amelia's room became a creative office, walls lined with thank you letters from scholarship recipients, her music box now playing for visiting kids during foundation events. Swan, their loyal lab, bounded through the halls, a furry therapist whose wet-nosed nudges coaxed smiles from even the darkest days. Marriage counseling continued, sessions evolving from raw confrontations to gentle reflections, Jonathan and Eliza rediscovering each other through shared walks along the waterfront, hands intertwined, discussing not just loss but future travels, perhaps to Paris, where Eliza had once dreamed of dancing. The ballet world, too, felt the ripples of Amelia's story, evolving in response to the horror that had infiltrated its graceful realm. McCaw Hall underwent renovations, installing state-of-the-art surveillance systems with AI facial recognition and alleyway floodlights that banished shadows. Competitions nationwide adopted buddy systems, where dancers paired up for breaks and anonymous reporting apps became standard, allowing participants to flag creepy behavior without fear. Sophie, Amelia's rival-turned-ally, rose to prominence as a professional ballerina with the Pacific Northwest Ballet, dedicating her debut performance to Amelia with a solo that incorporated elements of The Dying Swan. In interviews, she spoke candidly about the pressures of the industry, the cutthroat rivalries, the predatory coaches, crediting Amelia's case with sparking a #MeToo-like movement in dance, where survivors shared stories of harassment, leading to the ousting of several high-profile figures, including Victor Klein, who faced charges in California for inappropriate conduct with minors. Klein's trial, though separate, echoed Eddie's, with evidence of deleted messages and witness testimonies painting him as a manipulator who skirted the edges of legality. He was convicted on lesser charges, sentenced to probation and registry as a sex offender, his career in ruins. Mia, the flexible dancer from Vancouver, pivoted to choreography, creating pieces that explored themes of vulnerability and resilience, one titled Vanished Grace, premiering to standing ovations and critical acclaim. Lila, the quiet one with a troubled past, found her footing outside dance. Therapy led her to social work, where she helped foster kids navigate trauma, her own experiences a bridge to empathy. She occasionally reached out to the Hartleys, sending cards on Amelia's birthday, a quiet acknowledgement of shared scars. Detective Maria Ruiz, now Captain Ruiz, became a legend in the Seattle PD, her handling of the case a textbook example taught in academies. Promoted and decorated, she led a cold case unit, applying lessons from Amelia's investigation, meticulous evidence chaining, interagency collaboration, and the power of public engagement. The accomplice, Eddie's former co-worker Mark Riley, was sentenced to 20 years for aiding and abetting, his confession revealing a web of small-time crimes that included fencing stolen goods and covering tracks for debts. Riley's testimony confirmed Eddie's solo act in the murder but exposed a darker underbelly, underground networks where disturbed individuals traded tips on evasion. Forums Ruiz's team infiltrated and shut down, leading to arrests across the Northwest. Eddie's appeals dragged on, each denied, his life sentence a fortress of concrete and regret. From prison, he wrote rambling letters to the media, claiming remorse and seeking redemption through art. Crude sketches of dancers mailed to galleries, most rejected but one exhibited in a controversial show on criminal minds. Psychologists studied him, publishing papers on fixation disorders, using his journal as a case study. The warehouse, once a chamber of horrors, was demolished, the site repurposed as a community garden, flowers blooming where darkness had festered, a symbolic rebirth the Hartleys attended, planting a rosebush in Amelia's honor. Society at large grappled with the case's implications, sparking broader conversations on safety in the arts. Documentaries streamed on Netflix, The Lost Swan, garnering awards for its sensitive portrayal, interviewing the Hartleys and Ruiz, interweaving footage of Amelia's performances with reconstructions of the crime. Books followed, a true crime bestseller by a local journalist, Eliza's memoir, Dancing Through Shadows, which climbed charts, royalties funneled back to the foundation. Schools incorporated Amelia's story into curricula on stranger danger and online safety, her smiling photo in textbooks a cautionary icon. Social media evolved too. Platforms like Instagram tightened policies on anonymous accounts, implementing AI to flag predatory patterns, a direct response to Amelia's stalked profile. The hashtag Justice for Amelia hashtag morphed into hashtag Protect Our Artists, a global movement advocating for mental health resources in creative fields, reducing the isolation that bred vulnerabilities. In Seattle, annual memorials at McCaw Hall drew crowds, dancers in pink tutus performing en masse, candles lit as Swan Lake played, the air filled with the scent of lavender incense. The Hartleys hosted these, Eliza often joining the dance, her movements a blend of grace and gravity, Jonathan filming to share online, keeping Amelia's spirit viral. Yet, amidst the progress, personal hauntings persisted. Eliza dreamed of Amelia nightly, visions of her pirouetting in misty alleys, calling out unanswered. Therapy helped, but some nights she wandered the house, winding the music box until dawn. Jonathan battled guilt, second-guessing every parental decision, but found solace in mentoring foundation kids, one boy's awkward leaps reminding him of Amelia's early stumbles. They conceived unexpectedly, a late miracle. Baby girl named Rose after the locket engraving, her cries filling the home with new life, a bridge between past and future. Rose grew amid stories of her sister, photos on walls, learning ballet steps on tiny feet, Eliza teaching her with gentle hands. The family traveled to New York, watching Rose audition for the Academy Scholarship Amelia had dreamed of, tears flowing as she was accepted. Seattle changed. Landfills implemented stricter monitoring, waste trucks GPS tracked, alleys in arts districts patrolled. Other cases resolved in Amelia's wake. The violinist's family found closure through matched DNA, the painter's remains discovered in a similar dump, Eddie's network crumbling under scrutiny. As decades unfolded, Amelia's legacy endured, a beacon in the fog. The Hartleys aged gracefully, gray hairs and laugh lines mapping their journey. Rose became a prima ballerina, her performances infused with Amelia's essence, dedicating encores to the sister who dances in the stars. Ruiz retired, writing a book on investigative resilience, crediting the case with her life's purpose. Eddie died in prison, forgotten but for case studies. The story, once a wound, healed into a scar, stronger tissue, a reminder of fragility and fortitude. In quiet moments, Eliza and Jonathan sat by the sound, watching waves, feeling Amelia's presence in the wind's whisper, her vanishing not an end but a transformation, inspiring a world to hold its dreamers closer.